Okay, today we're going to learn about changing percents to fractions and fractions to percents. Please turn in your textbook to page 101, and when you get there, complete the what you'll learn. You may pause the video at any time to complete the things before you move on to the next section. Okay, now that you have scanned the lesson, here are a couple of things we're going to learn today. Learn how to write percents as fractions, and then learn how to write fractions as percents. Go ahead and jump down to the real world link and take a moment, and I want you to complete these questions here. Pause the video at this time. You'll notice here that we have this 10 by 10 grid. These 10 by 10 grids actually represent the 100%. So because there's 10 by 10, this means that there are 100 boxes or units here. That 100 units represents a percent, because a percent means out of 100. Okay? So if we have 3 out of 20, if we get it out of 100, how do you get from 20 to 100? Times 5. So 3 times 5 would mean that we'd have 15. So you'll notice here they've shaded 15 pieces. They don't have to be these exact 15, but there should be 15 pieces shaded. Okay, here 3 out of 25. To get to 100 would be times 4. So times 4 would give you 12 out of 100. So you see 3, 6, 9, 12. So on and so forth. Checking your gymnastics and swimming, you see there, and then you see these fractions that represent these percentages. So basketball is 15 out of 100 here. That would be 15%. Football is 12 out of 100. That's 12%. Gymnastics, 5%, and then swimming would be 9%. Okay? Go ahead and turn the page to 101. On this page, we're going to talk about changing percents to fractions. So percent means out of 100. So here, if we have 45 out of 100, that's 45 hundredths. But we can simplify that by taking out a common factor of 5, which would simplify to 9 twentieths. 9 twentieths is equal to the 45%. These two are equivalent values, but they're just different forms. So we're changing that percentage to an equivalent fraction. Okay, look at example 1. Write 50% as a fraction in simplest form. So in fraction form, that would be 50 out of 100. We can take out a common factor of 50, which would give us 1/2 would be the equivalent fraction. Look at number 2. In a recent survey, 55% of cell phone owners said they text message. So we have 55 out of 100. Always a percent means out of 100. Divide that by 5, we'd get 11 twentieths. And then because it's a story problem, we would need a label. So that would mean 11 twentieths of cell phone owners text message. That's what you see here. Okay? Take a minute and do the got it's at the bottom of the page, A, B, and C, and pause the video at this time while you work on those. Okay, now take a look. Let's compare our work. Here we have 75 out of 100, which we can simplify, which gives us 3/4. This would be 90 out of 100, which we can simplify, which would be 9/10. And then we have 38 out of 100, which we'd simplify by that common factor of 2, which would give us 19 twentieths. Nope, sorry, 19, let's fix that. Made a mistake there, go back and fix it. That would give me 19 fiftieths, because 100 divided by 2 is 50. So 19 fiftieths. If you need more work with changing percents to a fraction, go ahead and rewind the video at this time, re-watch it so you're making sense of it. If you're feeling comfortable and confident, let's move on to page 103. Here now we have a word problem. This table shows the percent of movie type rented during a month. What fraction of the rentals were action? So if we go over here to action, we see it was 35%. That means 35 out of 100. Simplify by that common factor of 5, we'd get 7 twentieths. So action movies were rented 7 twentieths of the time. Take a minute and try the got it, letter D, using the table above. Pause the video. Okay, here you wanted to look at horror movies. So if we look at horror movies, that's 5%, so 5 out of 100. Simplify by that common factor of 5, we'd get 1/20. So we would say horror movies were rented 1/20 of the time. Okay. Again, if you need to review that, rewind the video at any time, pause, look back at things. Otherwise, let's move on to now changing the fractions to a percent. Okay, so to write a fraction as a percent, we're going to find an equivalent ratio with 100 as a denominator. We'll talk about another strategy tomorrow that we could also use, but for today, we're going to come up with these equivalent ratios. So here we have 6/8. We notice 6/8 could be simplified by a factor of 2, which gives me 3/4. That's still a fraction, so I want to change this 3/4 to a percent. Well, we know a percent is out of 100, so we need to have a denominator out of 100. How do I get from 4 to 100? Times 25. So 3 times 25 would give me 75. So 75 out of 100 is the same thing as 75%. So 75% is equivalent to 3/4, which means it's also equivalent to the 6/8. So my answer would be 75% of that rectangle. Go ahead and try the got it's at the bottom of this page, this letter E. Pause the video at this time, and then we will check. Okay, if you take a look here, 9/12 could be simplified by that factor of 3, which would give me 3/4 again. We probably didn't have to come up with the equivalent ratio because we had just done this, but it would be out of 100 times 25, do the same thing to the top that we do to the bottom to keep them equivalent. That would give us 75, which would be 75%. If you need to look back here, go ahead, rewind the video. If not, let's move on to page 104. At the top, we have this word problem. Mitch made 12 out of 40 shots during the championship game. What percent of his shots did Mitch make? Well, if we have 12 out of 40, I notice I can simplify that by a factor of 4. So 12 divided by 4 is 3, 40 divided by 4 is 10. So we get 3/10, but we want to know the percent, so I know that I have to get to something out of 100. How do we get from 10 to 100? Times 10 is correct. So 3 times 10 would give me 30 out of 100. Because it's now out of 100, I can just call this 30%. So we would say 30% of his shots Mitch made, or he made 30% of his shots. Okay, try the got it, letter F here. Pause the video at this time. Okay, let's check. Alana spelled 19 out of 25 words correctly. We need to get to out of 100, so that'd be times 4. So 19 times 4 gives me 76. So 76 out of 100 would be 76% of the words she spelled correctly. For tomorrow, you're going to work on page 105 for your homework. You're doing 1 through 10. If you need to rewind and go back and watch something to help you, you may do that while you're working on your homework. Otherwise, for tomorrow, page 105, 1 through 10, you may close the video and get started on that at this time.